Hi everyone from Giaco. After living over a decade in Finland, I decided to help building a bridge between the English-speaking people living in Finland and the local community. Listen to my podcast to discover the most interesting and incredible people from Finland and to dig into Finnish culture and controversial issues that impact all of us in our daily life. And now sit back and enjoy listening. Bye! Hi everyone. The following is a conversation with Horowitz. She is an expert in media, and with her we focus on how is media perceived nowadays. Is media trustful anymore? What methods and protection are in place to separate good news from fake news? And what is Finland doing about all this? We also talk about social media and their influence on our echo chamber, but we end up with really positive spirit, believing in a better future. Please enjoy. Hi Minna.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great and so happy to be here.
Thank you for coming. So, would you tell us something about yourself, who you are, what you do for a living, your job, so then we introduce the topic of the day and we dig and dive into it?
Sure. My name is Minna Aslama Horowitz and I'm a researcher at the University of Helsinki in a huge research consortium called DECA. I don't even remember the whole what the acronym stands for.
I can tell you.
Okay.
Democratic Epistemic Capacity in the Age of Algorithm. Was it that?
That was perfect and beautiful. However, what does that mean? It really means that we're scholars from different walks of life, from law to journalism to youth studies, social psychology, computer science. I myself, I'm a media policy scholar, but I also deal with media literacy and especially disinformation lately from the perspective of citizens and the kind of disinformation we have in the media. So that's what I do. And I'm also part of an organization proudly called Fact Bar, which is a fact checker, award-winning organization, civil society organization here in Finland.
And then exactly the topic, media, information or misinformation. So we navigate in days in which we have more information than what we can handle. There are platforms of all sorts. Each of us finds information from almost wherever they want, even if they are not like official platform for information. Like in the old days, you had a newspaper and information was coming from newspaper. Nowadays, from whatever internet site, there are pieces and bits of information. So how people can navigate this whole of the information, and what exactly is then DECA doing? Because you are fact checking and you are dealing with this problem, information volume and accuracy of information. Where do we start from? How do we take this in small pieces that we can digest and discuss with?
Well, if I had a perfect answer for you, I would probably be a billionaire or a politician or anyway, a very important people and not just a lowly researcher. But what we research in DECA is that we try to understand the kind of communities that exist in Finland who may not be watching the Yle YLE news or reading Hesari, Helsingin Sanomat. What kind of groups do we have in today's society that have specific information needs, maybe linguistics, maybe just because of the way they live or they live maybe in between different cultures. That's what we research. In Faktabari, we actually do fact-checking and we create practical media literacy tools for teachers, for young people, so that we can all learn to think about, to stop when we see something and think about it and maybe verify the information, because we unfortunately can trust very little in today's age. However, in Finland, if you're a Finn and Finnish-speaking Finn or Swedish-speaking Finn for the matter, we're kind of safe. We have a long tradition of strong independent media organizations. Yeah. And every time we measure trust in media, Finnish media outlets in Finnish
Yeah.
get high marks. I mean, this is like unheard of anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I checked it. It was like the first, and I have here the graph, and it was saying that like, was it 69% of people trust main media in Finland, and I discovered that Greece is the one that scored the lowest with only 19%. I wonder like what do they do? So probably no one is listening to main information. But now we're maybe digressing. But how did Finland succeed in getting, first of all, information that is not politically tempered with, and then that is fact checked? Because then we go, for example, to America or other countries where like it's clear that certain tabloid or certain newspapers are clearly politicized, or they favor one party or the other, and then also there are no facts. There are just like news. We are in the byte news and fake news era. So something that catch the attention, but then probably the fact is not checked. How Finland kept this profile so high, from 69 to the lowest that it's 19?
I'm sure there are very many reasons. One very particular reason is that if you're a Finnish-speaking Finn, I mean, there are only a handful of us, if you think about globally. So
Yeah.
we have been able to sort of keep our national media very the same and very strong for a long time. And people have actually talked about something called the Nordic media welfare state. So the independent media with editorial independence, independent funding, mix of public service media and commercial media, all of that, and everybody's kind of worked in consensus and in collaboration. This has existed for decades and decades. And we still are in the sort of the last bits of that kind of wonderful, sweet kumbaya reality. However, I did a research in the Nordic countries actually with some colleagues, and we interviewed media professionals, policymakers, and media literacy folks, and they said, we are living in the borrowed time of trust. It's really the last minutes, and we can lose it at any point. And I think it is wonderful that we have this asset in Finland, but we also have to take into account like what you're doing public service, talking about the life in Finland, the Finnish reality, but in a language that is more widely understood than Finnish.
Yeah.
And this is something we have to understand in Finland, that we have Finns who talk all kinds of languages, live in very different kind of realities in Martinlaakso or in Rovaniemi or in Åland or in Eastern Border. And we have to take into account that we if we want to remain as trusted as a nation and trustworthy, have trustworthy media, we got to do better. We can't lose it.
I was just telling to you behind the scenes when mics were off that the reason why I started this podcast, or where the idea generated, was exactly seeing this information between friends of mine, English-speaking friend of mine, during Corona time, and noticing how safe and secure I was feeling listening to Finnish media, that it was all in Finnish. Feeling home, that like, okay, someone is actually pondering, checking data, multiple talk during the day, slow step, baby step, analyzing other countries. Okay, Finland was lucky that got the wave later, so we had, of course, this advantage of seeing what was happening live in other countries. But I felt really secure, and then there wasn't the same good information in English. And my English-speaking friends here that live in Finland, they started, or they heard, and they got their information from America or from other different countries, and some were totally into some big scheme and something that it's behind, that it's manipulated by corporate. Some other people were skeptic of the existence of it, and myself, I was reading Italian newspapers where seems that like it was kind of an ongoing circus. So I thought at that time that there has to be a channel where people can listen to. I wasn't thinking facts at the time, and my point is not to be a fact checker, but provide good information and provide information about people and provide also a view of what is Finland and why Finland it's a great place to live. But everything started from this misinformation. Mm-hmm. So I understand how important it is to keep it, but also to keep this high profile that Finnish news have, but also to spread it within Finland in other languages.
We are so much in agreement. I can't even believe it, but what you're doing is amazing. And I also do think that not only is this is according to the Finnish values of equality and engaging everybody in the society, but it's also a security issue right now. We are living in this multi-crisis world. We have both health crisis as well as geopolitical major crisis, and I can't think we can afford to lose what we have. And this is why I think this is very urgent, and I hope our politicians take this seriously. I really do, because it is about political will and then support and funding for independent media. I know both public service media is being questioned by some politicians, as well as our commercial media outlets are struggling because of platforms are taking away their advertising revenue. So now we do need to think about this as social equality, but also national security issue.
Also because anyway, through information should be a right to everyone. And so there should be an organization or something that takes care that the information then it's available to everyone, but it's also truthful. Mm-hmm. And we are in time in which it seems that nothing is true. How you said that you have this fact checker and you are, was it the bar?
It's called Faktabari or Fact Bar. It is bilingual actually. Everything you can find, all the resources in Finnish and in English. Faktabari, Fact Bar.
So what is a framework that you use or that you teach that helps people? You said like double check. Can you open up a bit more, like what concretely like would be an example of how to go around and navigate the media? You open a page and there is a link and you think that someone smart has been writing that and you read that, and how explain, open up a bit so we maybe give some hint to people what to do.
Stop. First, stop. Don't do anything. Think about a little. Because we know, you and me and everybody knows, social media especially works with emotions. And that's why we react so quickly. We love, we hate, we type up a nasty response, or we click in that link and we're so curious and we're excited. It goes with emotions. We have to take a step back. And if you're not sure, something seems fishy when you've taken a little breather or two, then verify. Try to see if you can Google the same topic and you come up with other links. Then, of course, Faktabari has a lot of resources, for instance, for image verification, how you can do it. There are all kinds of simple tools for that. And now also how you can, for instance, detect deep fakes by AI and so on and so forth. I'm more the policy person. I'm not the educational person. But there are lots of resources, and we're about to publish a guidebook on AI.
Okay.
What everybody should know about AI. So check Faktabari, faktabari.fi for that guide.
Maybe we should state also like what is a deep fake, because that's something that maybe not everyone is familiar with.
Good point. It is a video or maybe an image, but often, more often now, a video that seems very real.
Yeah.
but it's not. But it's created by AI.
Yeah, made by a computer, and it seems original, and there are deep fake where politicians state some really horrendous stuff, and then they circulate the internet as if they would be real. So it is really confusing for sure for people. Um, uh, I was thinking about this deep fake that is just a part, because when you say you were saying stop and think about your emotion and try to find something else, or maybe you can Google even the opposite of what you've just found out and see if you see, you still find it's such a polarized era of our life that you always find anyone, you always find also the same good looking articles that they talk about the opposite side, and they look exactly truthful as the one that talk about the other. I know you don't have an answer because you would be, as you said, like you would be maybe a politician or something, but it is a difficult place to navigate.
Yeah, and that is exactly why I say that national media systems that are traditionally trustworthy and truthful and well-resourced, like we have in Finland, are such an asset. They are worth more than gold or diamonds or cryptocurrency or whatever. They are priceless because we have journalistic ethics and journalistic norms and practices for a reason. And those still exist in Finland. I'm a policy person, so I have to say this. This is why the European Union is actually drafting a law that would support national media systems, because they realize that they can't govern Meta and TikTok and the rest until to a certain point. And now there's AI and things develop so quickly. So they've realized lately that they really want to support European democracy by supporting media systems. Part of this is not only disinformation, but also, for instance, harassment against journalists.
Sure.
Or anybody who's creating knowledge, scientists.
Content, yeah.
So we're kind of in this battle, not only geopolitical crisis, but also information warfare is going on, not only between countries, but between actors that want to make money, or want to influence, just cause chaos for whatever reason, not necessarily political, sometimes for business reasons. And disinformation is great business for the platforms.
Yeah, because they attract people.
Exactly.
But what is the European Union doing at the level of policies? Because anyway, it is an organ that regulates and make regulations. So what are the regulations with information? Because there is this, if we transport the problem to a country level, the government for freedom of speech doesn't have the right to cut anyone from speaking, and especially they cannot go to a private company and say don't publish, because it's against the freedom of speech, and then it is like public against private. And that's something that, of course, it's a big debate also in America. So what is European Union? What are the tools? What can the European Union do? Because then we are stepping on a higher level, because the European Union, it's over the country.
It's actually doing a lot. It has this big program that will just come to force in a few weeks, I think, even having to do with defending democracy. And it has laws that actually protect our online presence. And for instance, that political advertising has to be Political advertising is governed. Also, our data is governed. So technically, we have right to know where our data is going if we're doing something online. E-commerce is being governed much more directly, and actually the European Union has asked all the big platforms to report about the disinformation they detect on their own platforms. Well, then the problem becomes, do we get to know anything from the big platforms? Do they tell us what's really happening? That's another question. But at least the European Union in that level, again, in the level of disinformation, is asking the platforms to provide reports. But you're so right. We have so many instances in outside of Europe where disinformation laws are actually used to silence people who want to protest against, let's say, a horrible government.
Exactly. And narrative can be spinned, of course, but also there is this silencing that you can filter, or a government can filter the news and the information from the rebels or from the opposite side, so that like there is no platform to be heard, or there is no real knowledge to be seen. And this, unfortunately, we're seeing nowadays.
Yeah, and can I get back to this, because I live in the US half of the time, and when I'm there, I really don't care about news.
Okay.
I really don't.
Because you mistrust the news.
I mistrust all the news. I become this kind of like news avoider that everybody is scared of. We don't want to get them because they are not active citizens if they're news avoiders. But I become this new, and I'm very conscious of it. And I almost consume news as it's entertainment. If we listen to it, with my husband, I'm driving the car and we listen to the news, we comment on it as if it's like a talk show, like entertainment talk show, not real news. And this is what we don't want to get to. But when we have crisis situations, and especially during COVID, it was very scary how, at the same time when we have these strong national media systems, we also have the global viral messages.
Yes.
As you were saying about your friends. And I used to teach yoga when I was younger. And I'm watching a Finnish news program in the US during COVID, during lockdown, and it's talking about vaccinations in Finland. And all of a sudden I see my yoga friends, some of them, protesting, yelling against, the government is, it's restricting our rights, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what is happening? These people who have been peace, love, happiness, let's get together, all of a sudden it's like them, us, they're taking away our freedom. And then I realized that this kind of crazy QAnon conspiracy theories entered Finland through these wellness communities that are global, that have been following each other throughout the years and decades, and they follow the same websites, they have the same authorities, and all of a sudden, that's a kind of a network of people who are interested in the same thing, and all of a sudden. So I talked to some people about this, and one person who was very disturbed about this, who was part of this wellness community, said that if that person would believe in conspiracy theories, they would think that perfect way to get this conspiracy everywhere would be, and especially in Finland, which is very sort of trust-oriented community and factual community and society, would be through wellness, which is a little bit more, embracing all kinds of knowledges. And I used to love it. I thought it was wonderful when we were sort of thinking about Om and angel dust and, wonderful, and I thought it was funny. I thought this is great for the Finnish society because we're so factual and stiff. And all of a sudden, that's the avenue.
Yeah.
That was just shock to me. It really was. I couldn't believe it.
And it spread it like a cult.
Like a cult. And everywhere. Finland wasn't the only place, but I thought that person who was commenting about the fact that because Finland is such a sort of engineer society.
Yeah. Pragmatic
Exactly. That was the one avenue in.
Yeah. You can breach through there.
And then I couldn't even follow this. I started to see the YouTube videos of some people who were sort of the thought leaders, and so I had to stop.
Mm.
And this is what I mean. It doesn't. It can come, this kind of disinfo, this kind of disease of disinformation, and sort of this kind of us them. We know, they don't know anything. It's very dangerous because people really want to do good. QAnon folks want to do good. They want to save the world. These wellness people wanted to save us from the vaccines.
Yeah, I totally see and understand your point, and I'm also shocked why then the outlet it's always violence.
Exactly.
Because you can be, we have example of Gandhi or other people that tried to make a change or made a change, but they didn't use violence. And I understand that there are people that believe that they know the real truth, but why we are in this in this phase in which of maybe it's not society, but it's our evolution. We are super healthy, we are super wealthy. Okay, we have of course obesity and we have wars and we have fame. We're people that don't have food, but otherwise people that live quite a good standard they have a good standard living. Maybe they don't have enough to worry about that they start their own small fight in the yard and they want to have a fist fight at the end. And why it has to go for a fist fight and not for a chat? So the media should be a place where you can have the conversation and you can have this fact checking, but somehow we end up being like black and white and raising the fist. Is this a way? Do we have anything in plan, thinking of how to mediate, how to make this kind of polarity to slow down, not slow down, but to calm down? Mm-hmm. Are you or Deka thinking about this kind of topics? Not only the fact that there is this information, but also how this information is used.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I hate to say this because I used to say that, you say that literacy is like a cure for everything and it's just a buzzword. We have to make big changes. Of course, we have to do all kinds of things, but I also do think that engaging in sort of awareness raising and of digital information literacy is one of the most powerful tools, because then you enable an individual. Then you make somebody empowered to stop, think, maybe try to verify, maybe decide not to share something, although it's so intriguing and funny, but maybe it's also harmful to a community. So, okay, I won't share. So that kind of little action, instead of just creating something, a new committee or a new law or something, is super important. And I do think that Finland, because it has this wonderful legacy, and also the legacy of so-called media education and critical thinking taught at schools, all of that, has a great asset right there, but it has to be diversified and it has to be understood that we also are, unfortunately, getting more fragmented.
Yeah.
And I'm not only talking about language or people who come from elsewhere and become Finns or Finns who are born here and fully understand Finnish. It's not only that. We can see in the recent research that we did in the Nordic countries, and this is a tendency in all the Nordic countries, that we also start to see the political polarization happening in trust in national media. It's clear that the parties, those respondents in the surveys who are very much in the right, are getting very skeptical.
Yeah. But this pocketing and this that the people are getting into this pocket of information inside the countries, they can have like really detrimental consequences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so in DECA, we are researching, as I said already earlier, what these different groups that might already be in a little bit of a pocket, what do they say? What do they need? What would they want in order to participate in a sort of broader Finland-wide conversations or take part, actually go to Hesari, Helsingin Sanomat, or YLE, the Finnish Broadcasting Company website, and read something from there.
You break the barrier and open them. Because you were saying that there are anyway, both like immigrants now from this war in the east in Russia and Russia against Ukraine, that there are immigrants that came here in Finland, but they still are in their pocket of information, both like Ukrainian being here, but then they just follow certain kind of information, and then Russian here that only follow certain kind of information. And how is Finland and DECA thinking this problem not to cluster and get communities to close, bubble up, and then maybe start some rioting like it has happened in other countries? The different set of information create actually a totally different view of the world.
Yeah. What my colleagues are doing is they're really working with these communities. We also support one civil society organization that is working with people like you who are, well, you speak perfect Finnish, but people who are also doing media in other languages than Finnish in Finland, or are migrant journalists. And what do they need? How do they feel like getting their story ideas through? Where would they like to publish? What do they see as, from a journalistic perspective, what is needed? And some of my colleagues will start news reading circles in libraries. So you can come to library, you take a couple of news items and discuss them, what different news outlets say about it.
So from digital we are going back to analog.
Hey, I know it from the US. Some of my neighbors are full-blown QAnon. Some of them are not, but some of them are, and they are lovely.
Yeah.
I remember having dinner with them for the first time. I didn't know where to look when I started to hear that Michelle Obama is a man and so on and so forth. They had inside knowledge about it, and then I didn't know what to say. I was so astonished, but they're lovely people.
Yeah.
But when you meet them face to face, you can start the conversation. Oh, really? And why do you think that? And where do you get the information? And why?
Yeah.
And you start this dialogue, and we are friends. I can't. First, I said to my husband, "We're never going to go back there again, and I'm never going to have anything to do with them again." But then I thought, this is not the way. This is exactly reinforcing the bubble. So this is just a silly personal example, but I think we need to do more face-to-face.
That's a big problem, because it's face-to-face. I totally understand. It's difficult because people are really busy. People anyway, they feed from digital. And there is these things that I'm sure you know, like this echo chamber phenomenon that like, it means that our internet, it's created so that it offers you with AI, understands your behavior and understands your research and understands what you read and what you're interested in and about, and it feeds you the same kind of stuff, or analyzes what other people of your like are interested in, it feeds you the same. So you're kind of like always inside that bubble. And even if you try and search in the internet, you are kind of like always bumping against the same walls. I know you don't have an answer or a solution of it, but it is really difficult way, because then when you sit with these people at the table and you talk and you ask them, well, like, okay, where did you get this info from? You know, it's kind of like, yeah, it's everywhere. It's in the internet. You know, I read it here and there, because it's the echo chamber. They get to see only what the internet is feeding.
That is true, but you can't force anybody to read anything else unless we create some sort of a godlike algorithm and decide that it has to force, people to see diversity of views or whatever when they go online, which actually many public service media organizations, when they have their recommender systems, they have ethical principles that you are not only going to get recommended exactly what you've seen before or you listened to before, but a little bit different. So they want to expose you to a little bit more diversity than maybe commercial sites. But nevertheless, I mean, there's nothing without dialogue, is there? There's nothing without dialogue. We don't have a society, we don't have a community. How can we even define ourselves if we are not in some sort of dialogue? And I'm not an expert. This is just my personal opinion. But if one is so passionate about something that you resort to violence, or even violence in words, right? Which is violence as well. Then there's something inside you that wants to get recognized or is heard or wants to get really heard.
Yes.
Right. So as silly as it sounds and as naive it sounds, but it's not naive because it's also practicality. Like, we got to create places to meet and discuss, and really even listen to that QAnon person.
Yeah, that's a huge topic, because I totally understand where you're going and what you say, because also when there was the attack to the Capitol, you could see that, like, the people that were there, the age, gender, about, well, you cannot, of course, from the style say, but many people were disfranchised.
Absolutely.
And so the problem, it's not in the media, it's somewhere far from there.
Hallelujah. This is what a really good colleague of mine who's a journalist and also now a researcher and runs a wonderful independent research organization. He was born in Romania, and so he studied a lot also Eastern Europe, and so he's seen a lot. He says, we focus on disinformation. And we try to study disinformation and what's happening on TikTok and how many, where do we get the big data and what do we know? That doesn't help us at the end at all. Mm-hmm. Even if we know who's spreading disinformation, okay, well, maybe we can make them stop in some kind of way, or maybe we can somehow distort the business models or whatever. But at the end, it is the humans who are suffering for one reason or another. Yeah. And often it's inequalities, whether it's economic, but also, as you said, what we started with, inequalities of how to understand knowledge and how to relate to people around you. And how to understand your own worth. What your worth.
Yeah, also the trolling, people that are trolling, it's pretty common word nowadays, but are people that they are just projecting something that they feel, probably anger, solitude, frustration. They are just channeling there and projecting it to other people just to, be mean. And the problem is somewhere else. But we try to address the symptom, not the cause. Mm-hmm. But maybe we don't have enough time for a podcast to solve that kind of problem. But it's absolutely true. The problem, especially in America or in countries where the capitalism has split the society heavily from rich to poor, and then also putting a cap where the poor cannot overcross the line anymore. There, the phenomenon is much more strong.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I was shocked when Trump was elected, but I am not shocked anymore, not at all, when I really started to look around.
There were signs.
Oh, and it's a broken society. I hate to say it because it's my other home country and I love so many things about it, but it is broken because of these inequalities. And if anybody had dared to look, this is a trend that was easily detectable for years and years and decades and decades.
So,
and we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there in Finland, I don't think.
No.
But now we've gone very far from where we started from.
No, but because this is creative talking, and but the echo chamber. I don't know if you ever heard this. I know I follow one TED talk, and now unfortunately I cannot say the name of this guy, but he made a test. He was a brown skin, and he made a test about this echo chamber, and probably searching YouTube it can be found. But he bought a new computer, opened it, and started to think himself as a right-wing neo-Nazi person, starting to look into things that are on the topic and searching slogan and going into blogs. And suddenly he was like living not an alter ego, but he had a computer that was a Nazi computer, while he, from the other side, was a black person. And he would interact with people in platform and stuff, and he would, because he was shocked at kind of like, how can people just see me as, or I walk by the street and people are looking at me like I would be the devil in person. And it was quite a good example of how actually you can, starting from zero, you can really end up to the extreme of a phenomenon that is racism, and it's scary, but it speaks to the danger of the media and the information. That is something that I don't know. Is it for example, is it taught in schools in Finland what is information and internet, how to approach?
Absolutely, and Finland has a very long tradition, and in governmental policies also that we have this sort of media literacy and critical literacy, and we also learn to understand that there are business interests behind media, and that a story is always a view of some sort, that sort of absolute objectivity never exists. Yeah. I also know that the body, the governmental body that is responsible for this has also recently thought a lot about sort of the diversity and literacy. But technology, it just progresses so fast, and of course the fact that generative AI became a tool for all of us has been a game changer. Now anybody can create tons of disinformation if they want.
Yeah, absolutely, and really well written with ChatGPT.
Exactly right. And at the same time, go and ask somebody from ChatGPT and get all kinds of hallucinations that the machine do. That means that the machine actually connects data wrongly, and then the results are really funny. But I mean, it has brought about another set of problems. So, in terms of literacy, so that's why many civil society organizations, for instance, Faktabari, is following all these developments and then suggesting what should we do, and hey, look, now this is happening, and that's why we wrote the guidebook, for instance, on AI. At least there's little something. It's like the Band-Aid, but there's little something we can start with, and then I'm sure Finnish schools are taking new things into curricula.
What kind of measurement there are in place at the moment when we all know that, for example, because of the war in Russia, there are cyber attacks, but there is also cyber attack in the media. And we are under presidential elections. America will be again presidential election.
EU elections.
EU elections. What is, because we have seen it was then understood and analyzed that there were influences from Russia when there were the first election last year in America. So what are the measurement and how did things change? How are we better prepared to shelter, to have a democracy and have a real democratic process going on?
Which country are you talking
well,
about?
Finland. I'm the most interested now in Finland.
Yeah, I was still just going to say I have no idea what the U.S. government is doing, but in Finland, some of my colleagues, for instance, I know they don't talk much about the concrete things because obviously these are sort of national security issues, but they are working with some government bodies in detecting disinformation from social media data. So there are certainly, I don't know because I would never be told these kind of things. You don't publicize them, but I am sure that Finland is quite well prepared. That said, we have generative AI. We might have some new tensions between countries emerging. There might be even some tests, let's say during the presidential elections, that some foreign influence, they're trying to see what can happen. In Finland. They might test how they might be able to sway elections. I don't know. This is not my expertise, sort of this kind of strategic communications and security issues. But I am convinced that Finland is doing a lot. Then I would say that our last elections, parliamentary elections, already showed something interesting, and that is that social media matters more in election than it has before. Sure. And for instance, perussuomalaiset, they were great on TikTok. Obviously. So I think this is not, even if we don't think about disinformation, we can think about social media savviness of campaigning. And how do you reach certain groups of people, and that can even have an influence, even if it's not some sort of a fake information.
What's your opinion about social media, starting from Meta and all the Meta environment or TikTok? I know it's quite an open-end question, but the influence and the possibility to control. I don't know. I read once that, like, or maybe I heard it on a podcast, but anyway, that it was found out, for example, that the 30 of the major Christian active group in Facebook, over the 30, like 28, 27 were trolls, and they were like Russian made up. And so these are like information that they are under a company that is not regulated by the government. And that is an aspect that is really big when we think about information and steering information and steering people, sway them to one part of the other.
Yeah, that what you just described is absolutely a humongous problem. At the same time, and now we come back to the dialogue and the sort of the need to be heard. Obviously, social media has unleashed people's need to be heard. And some people talk about attention economy, that our economy is really now measured by attention you get. So that is why we also scream and yell, and the more outrageous we are, the more attention we get. And that is why disinformation also gets so much traction, because often it can be also almost ridiculous. And that's why it's getting shared, because it's funny, ridiculous, or curious, or crazy. Just think about some of the QAnon claims, for instance. So it clearly again tells us something about our societies, how much we want to be heard. And then it sort of amplifies that in very ugly ways. But at the same time, I think the avalanche of disinformation and sort of people's helplessness and fears, for instance, during COVID, and now because of the wars and all of that, it overshadows also the lovely things. We know so many support groups on social media, how people find one another, support one another, learn together. For instance, during COVID, I followed a wonderful group that was writing diary pages every day and sharing their COVID experiences, and or sharing the view from the window. I think that was a very, very popular one. And traveling around the world like that. And
nice, thank you for the good perspective. Now I thought that like during COVID, I saw probably it was on Facebook, it was a video made in Italy between two young becoming tennis stars, and they were playing on the rooftop from two houses, and they were sparring and playing tennis between two houses. And it was, of course, something that they would have never thought to do, but because they could not go and train anywhere, they were doing that. So, of course, there is also really nice content and enjoyable content. It's I am not a huge fan of social media, and I see there are statistics, and I was looking into some stuff that how detrimental is the impact on youth health, mental health. It's straight correlated depression or self-harming to the use of social media in a certain age of young people, because of probably, because of the kind of trolling, bullying, and also self-comparing that have. So I'm not a big fan, but sometimes I stopped thinking like probably, also because I've listened to some of the Zuckerberg interviews on long podcasts. The guy looks like a nice person that is not trying to do anything bad, but we are attracted by bad things, by excitement that maybe also feels a bit unpleasant, or by bullying. So is Facebook or Meta a product of what actually our society is, rather than the opposite, that the Facebook is shaping our society?
both and. It is shaping our society in that it's amplifying the negatives, because they rouse our emotions, whether it's disgust or pleasure or whatever it is, right? And because it gets views, clicks, when something is outrageous, as we've said many times during this conversation, when something is outrageous, it gets clicks, it gets shares, eyeballs. Data is the new oil, as they say. So it means that data is valuable. So in that way, Meta or any social media site amplifies that which gets attention. That's the attention economy. And unfortunately, it thrives with that kind of heightened emotions, whether it's love or disgust or anything in between.
And then the business model there, it's that they are selling the views, and so they can sell to advertise agency their spaces. So They are not that interested in what people see, but it's the fact that many people see.
Exactly. And as so many people have said, all these social media sites are built as games so that they reward us when we act, when we do something. And,
True.
you know, they get us addicted. And as you said, one huge problem is addiction and the youth mental health. But again, it's chicken and egg.
Yeah.
We can't say that it's just those platforms. It's us as well. And that's why I think it's horrible to say, and I don't want to leave us, each individual, to struggle with this alone. But we have to also take a little responsibility. We are not mindless people who are just led by social media.
Yeah.
I personally don't want to give my data to these big companies, but at the same time, I see there's also a lot of good, although, as I said, I think it's overshadowed by the bad. But there's still beautiful things that are happening on social media. People who are not able to connect otherwise can connect and all of that. But that's our choice. Are we joining that group that talks about their wonderful dogs? Guilty as charged? Or are we angrily reacting to a news item and ridiculing the politician who's being featured in that news item? Or are we sharing something that we suspect is false, but it's just a funny meme, so we want to do it?
Yeah.
And that's why this idea that when you see something, stop for a second, take that extra breath and think. What kind of person are you being? And I know we want to be heard and we want to be seen, and if we're not seen elsewhere, we want to be seen on TikTok or in that comment page on Instagram.
Yeah, and the likes.
And the likes, whatever it is. But we can be seen if we comment something nice. It could be an interesting experience. I used to do this with my students. I said to them, try to be without any digital devices for 24 hours. It became impossible. They said, 8 hours, 2 hours. But what if we, instead of that, if we committed ourselves in liking something truly positive, checking it out, that it's real, and liking something positive, or commenting something nice and supporting and positive for a day. How would it feel?
It's really good. Yeah, I have 3 small kids, so somehow it's kind of like I feel that I cannot ever do that because either someone will call me from the daycare or I have to be. But sailing, I was not long ago without the phone, and it felt really like liberating freedom. That like and especially it's kind of like, I want to go and take a picture of this, and then suddenly you see the screen and you say, the screen actually cannot take the beauty of all this, so why should I watch it? And I went to a concert or like to a festival this spring here in Helsinki, and the full concert that this pianist was playing 45 minutes, the guy, he was a man, but whatever, but the person was recording it, so he watched the whole thing through his own phone, and the artist was behind. So it's kind of like at the end it's the experience of like watching it home from YouTube, but I understand he wanted to have the full concert like recorded, but then the experience of being there with the artist was gone, missed. By the way, I wanted also to add something positive, because when you were talking about the social media and the use you do of it, it's also what you get and what it feeds you back. I was telling this story about the dark-skinned guy that went to the internet or opened a new computer and started that. But there is also the same story of a comedian that opened the book and started just a new computer and started only to look for like happy cats and cat videos, and then everything was only about cutie cats and funny memes. So you can make out of the same media, you can make something that is pleasurable and funny rather than contradicting and depressing.
Absolutely, but then again, you're in a bubble, even if it's your,
Yeah.
La La Land happy bubble.
Yeah.
But I'm more thinking like when we react, that we stop, and what if we just decidedly decide to react positively and encouragingly for a little while. But I have to say that when my students did this experiment, and they felt really anxious when they were without their, especially their mobile phones. They had the ghost phone, vibrating in their pocket, although the phone was,
they felt like,
kilometers away and somewhere else. They had left it home, but they felt it, and they felt they're lost. They don't know where to go. They felt they are missing out so much, and also because they didn't tell their boyfriends or their parents or whatnot. People got very worried when they didn't get the response back to a text.
Of course.
Or that like, why didn't you like my, gram post, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so it was an incredibly interesting experiment in that how addicted we are in so many different ways. They used to say that mobile phone is like a Swiss Army knife. You do everything with it. And it's very practical. It's your calendar, it's your video screen, it's your
email.
map, of course. But it's also socially. It's like the safety net that if you're not responding immediately, where are you? Are you lost? Did something happen to you? I don't know.
What got you into media in first place?
I don't remember. I really don't remember. I have there's no clear career path whatsoever. No. Let's not talk about that because I don't even know. No. And I used to study this, that, and the other thing, and I did my master's in Finnish language in conversation analysis, which is a form of sociology that would analyze this conversation. When do I stop? When do you say, how do we interact in conversation, and how are these little cues that we give to one another? Now it's your turn, now it's mine. So that's what I did, and all of a sudden I became to research media policy. It's a long story. It doesn't matter. But I had something interesting to say, but I'm thinking about it, and I'm going to say it as like the wrap-up of our conversation in a moment. I think you asked something. I'll think about it.
No, this interested me. Are there digital cues? Because when we are face to face, we have this body language, and we have cues of intonation and the way our body is. Are there digital cues? Do you see then from these digital cues, for example, if something is a robot or not?
There are ways to, it depends what you mean. There are, of course, all kind of emojis and everything to give us cues when something is ironic, something is supposed to be funny,
yes,
all
sure,
of those.
Sure.
That's one thing. Fact checkers can tell you all kinds of cues. One, I think, typical that we know from all kind of spam email also is the language, how it's used, whether it's perfect. Now it's getting so good with difficult. Generative AI that it's hard to detect. Same thing with, of course, images that are fake. They're getting very good. You can still almost see that they are fake when they're too perfect or too fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's getting more and more difficult. But there are cues. Unfortunately, and I read this from Wired magazine, people are continuously trying to develop tools, apps, with which you could check these kind of things. But as soon as there's a new app to check whether something is fake or not, there is an app to fool that app.
Of course.
And of course, the people who are inventing this are students, because there are apps or software to detect whether you've been plagiarizing or whether an essay has been written by ChatGPT. But then there's some smart students are creating ways in which a ChatGPT essay can be made a little imperfect, so it actually
it goes through.
So you don't have to do anything. First you do the ChatGPT essay, and then you run it through another software which makes it more human.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a never-ending story. But I think that we might also experience a revival of this face-to-face and of this human connection.
How? What is your hope coming from?
We are going to want imperfection, because that feels more authentic and for more relatable. And I have a lot of hope in young people. Really, I think they are done with filters and sort of unrealistic body images and perfect lives as reported on social media. They want another kind of world. And they are truly worried about how we're living today in this planet, whether it's climate, whether it's other kind of discrepancies, inequalities, and injustices.
True.
They see the world for what it is.
And they want to express their self for what they are, not to be like exactly as one or the others, or like the Kardashians.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So
it's nice. There is hope.
I think so. I think that, of course, back to media literacy, we have to teach critical literacy and sort of critical independent thinking in our schools, and also critical thinking is not only like I find my own truth somewhere online, but I am ready to listen to different kinds of viewpoints, and I'm ready to stop, and I'm ready not to go with my emotions and my first reactions, but I'm ready to take a little bit of time when I react or when I receive information and when I assess it. That's part of it. Not just that I go and find my own truth. But I do think that we are still humans at the end. We are not robots. We're never going to be replaced by AI. Unlike some people say, I want to finish with a story, and it's not my story. It's a story of a guy called Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the futurists, very famous. He, in the 60s, was already talking about the smartphone. He's been the keynote speaker in all kinds of conferences on tech and blah, blah, blah. And for a long time, he's been saying, we're going to be cyborgs. Yeah. And maybe at the end, we're even going to live forever, because our brains are going to be stored in some supercomputer. So even if our bodies fail, we'll still live on. And he, as most of Silicon Valley, are obsessed by eternal life. And you know, I don't know why those people's lives and brains are so important that they want to live forever in one form or another, but that's another point.
We have it also in religions, the eternal Graal, and it's something maybe deeper inside of our culture.
Exactly. So I'm watching this documentary about Ray Kurzweil, and he's like, well, we're going to be cyborgs. Either we're going to be some of these bionic people who are going to live however many centuries, or our brains are going to be in that supercomputer. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if I like that idea. And then the documentary continues to talk about Ray Kurzweil's life. And all of a sudden, you discover that this guy is taking maybe 70 pills, all kinds of supplements, and he is so afraid of dying. And then all of a sudden, you discover that he's so afraid of dying because his father died when he was a little boy. And that left him
Trauma.
sad and somehow longing for that father figure and fearing that something like that would happen to him. And then I was thinking, even this brilliant, brilliant mind is just a human, just a little boy. And similarly, I think behind all of this tech hype and our fears of disinformation and all this chaos that is around us and all these crazy leaders and these crazy conspiracy theorists, maybe are not that crazy, but maybe still inside of us is like that little somebody who wants to be heard and who wants to play with the others.
A sad person.
And that's why I have hope. Because we're humans after all, behind the keyboards and screens. And
That is really beautiful. I have to ask myself, like, what is behind Elon Musk that wants to go to space then? What is his trauma? But
we don't know.
We don't know, never gonna find out maybe. But thank you for the beautiful words. Thank you for giving us and me a pretty good, solid and safe picture of Finland. Also when you were describing this, that you believe in youth and how they are anyway emancipating and they are following they are using the brain much more than what I was using at that time. And it's giving hope. It feels much safer than where we started from, a huge chaos and how to navigate this. Apparently the solution is coming behind us.
Yeah, I'm convinced. I'm convinced, and we've seen amazing examples of young people fearlessly taking on leaders and demanding a better future. And we also know, and maybe this is the last positive note here, as much as we've talked about disinformation and bad information and social media dangers and all of that, there are a lot of young people who organize through social media, who talk about these issues on social media, who get themselves together. And for instance, when we think about the Fridays for Future and this kind of, or Black Lives Matter, this kind of activism, whatever you think about the causes, you're for them or against them, I don't know, but it also shows that the young people understand that you can organize online, but it's also important to meet face to face and sort of physically get together.
Yeah.
And they've understood that, and that's why I'm saying that I think the human connection online, but also offline, is not going to go anywhere, but it's just getting more and more important.
Nice. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.